Hi everyone, thank you for joining us in this breakout session. This is officially listed as a technical session, but it's actually going to be a hybrid of discussion panel and then technical. So we will have a presentation that's going to be after we've had the opportunity for a bit of a kind of a panel Q&A and then a discussion across the group. There's been a little bit of a change. I am your moderator today instead of Vladimir. We changed on the fly, primarily because Vladimir has a lot of great stuff to be presenting. And so you also heard from me already this morning. So we switched it up a little bit. This session is focused on open source software sustainability. So we're going to be talking about sustainability in general, but also more specifically about the work that is being done as part of the UC OSPO network. So as Stephanie mentioned yesterday in the opening session, the UC OSPO network across the UC has three thematic foci. One of them is in education, one of them is in discovery, and the third is in sustainability. And so we have members of the sustainability working group here as part of the panel, and I'll let them introduce themselves in just a moment, to talk about the work that we're doing, but also the vision of the OSPO with respect to open source software sustainability and where we're going to go with that. So first of all, I'm going to open, I should also say that because we're talking about the work of the working group and of the network, not every individual will necessarily answer every question because one person might encapsulate. So I'm going to direct questions to different panelists, and the others will contribute to the dialogue. So we're not necessarily, and that's a heads up for you, you don't all have to say exactly the same as each other in turn. So I'm going to start with Virginia, but this is a question for everyone. I am interested in telling people what your perspective is around open source software sustainability and why we should care and why you care.
Sure. So I'm Virginia. I'm part of the UC OSPO network at UC Santa Barbara. And I think when I think of sustainability, I think of living products, not just we did a study and then it was over, but products that are continuing to be developed and maintained. And I think preservation is preservation, sustainability is sustainability. But these are different models of success in academia, and I think they should both be encouraged. But I think sustainability is more about having a product mindset, which is not what we typically think of in academia as success. And so in my personal experience, I worked with a lot of research software engineers in my previous job. And a really common pattern that I've seen several times is somebody creates a new tool that's ahead of its time. They don't get funding to maintain the tool. 5 to 10 years later, when there's actually demand for the tool, they've moved on to something else. And somebody has to come along and basically reinvent the tool because it's easier to rebuild it from scratch rather than to resurrect the existing one. And I think that society loses out when that happens, and that's the problem that we're trying to solve when we talk about sustainability.
I'm going to pass to Laura.
Oh, to answer the same question?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Why you care and why we should care. Okay.
Okay, so there's like an honest answer, and then there's like a branded answer, and I'm just gonna do the honest answer first because honestly I'm tired. And the honest answer is I root for the underdog, like always. It's just, I'm always team underdog and team like open, and so on. So that's kind of why I care. So it's just the obvious, like that's the corrective. And then the sort of more branded answer is because everyone benefits from openness. And if everybody has access to everything, as we've been hearing about over and over and over again for the last couple of days, and most people who have been associated with open source already know that everybody can benefit from open in ways that they just can't, from everything being closed and especially everything being siloed. And that's something that I think academic culture in particular can still improve upon, is the silo, because even if these are open source, they can still be closed off in a almost in a marketing sort of way. And so that's something I think that we can work on.
Vladimir?
So yeah, I come from a perspective of an academic. I'm a professor at UC Davis, computer science, and a software engineer, an AI practitioner. So sustainability for me, of open source in particular, but open science and open everything, is really a process that at all points in time kind of leads to a trajectory where the project or the system or whatever is being worked on is surely on a trajectory to be sustainable. So it's more of a process. How do we perform so we are still sustainable, meaning self-reliant, but not as an end goal, but as a process. And why we care about that is because we have so much, especially at UC, of software that we are creating that kind of falls by the wayside as research money goes away. And we would like to elevate those. So learning about sustainability for me as a process, as something that we can contribute back, is about those projects that we can elevate instead of them falling apart and not being funded anymore.
Yeah, sort of to add to this in a different direction, I think there's also, at least from my perspective, a lot of need to like take care of the people. So you keep hearing developer maintainer burnout, and that's part of what I think these people lead these projects is because they're not getting support they need. They're being put new demands on them, and so I think there's a lot of ways of dealing with that. One is some better tooling. So I know, at least for the home projects I've had, that tool changes have made things a lot easier to handle. I think it's also a little bit of a matter of like educating community people around them. So it's really discouraging when you're a maintainer who's been like volunteering your time to build something and then having people come on your issue tracker and sort of yell at you for not doing a better job and asking you to do more work. And so I think also making sure that the community knows to be appreciative and pleasant to people is important. Not to just focus on the tools, but I think we also need to focus a little bit on the people and building up the community.
So I think those answers really kind of spoke to the value of sustainability. But then there's the question of what do we sustain? And so I've heard, people talk about technical sustainability. They talk about financial sustainability, and then also, and you touched upon, Jarrod, community sustainability. And so Laura is the community manager on behalf of the UC OSPO network. So Laura, I'm going to direct this to you, but others, please do chime in. Is a sustainable open source software project the same as having a sustained community? What is the relationship between community sustainability and software sustainability?
So I used to be a mathematician, and in math we are always talking about whether conditions are necessary or sufficient or both. I think that a sustained community is a necessary but not necessarily sufficient condition for a sustained project, and I think I guess that's like the very short answer is I think it's necessary but not necessarily sufficient. However, I do think it's pretty likely if you have a really strong community built around a project, not necessarily does that mean that you are going to have a sustained project if people sort of go off in a different direction together, but probably, right? Like it's probably going to be a sustained project if the community, if you take care of the community. However, if you don't take care of the community, then you have a project of one, and that has that lottery factor, and then that's the definition of unsustainable, right? And I think that some of the most important conversations that I've been having with maintainers in particular, because I only started in this role 5 months ago, and sort of the first thing that I did was go through and talk to maintainers of projects where the maintainers, what I was using was the data from our GitHub scraping to find projects that were associated with the various campuses. And I looked for projects that specifically said they were welcome open to contributions, or we welcome contributions, that sort of language, but did not have like a contributing.md or any kind of infrastructure that would allow people to confidently contribute to their project. And so I was reaching out to sort of that group in particular to say, hey, would you like to talk about how we can maybe help you attract more contributors to your projects? And it was the human factor. I mean, it's always going to come down to the human factor, right? Like the code is easy and the humans are hard. The end, right? But it was always like, I need emotional scaffolding to help me, and those were not their words. Were not. But that is in fact what they were telling me, was I need someone to hold my hand to help me figure out how to build up the human infrastructure around this project. I've got like, how do you clone this project, and how do you run it locally and all of that and whatever. But the how do you human in this project, that part is really much harder. And that's been sort of my focus. And I've been talking for a while. So.
As I said, this was directed to Laura, but any of the other panelists have insights they want to share on this subject?
I just want to mention a couple of examples where we found in earlier studies, maybe 5-10 years ago, that the social and technical contributions are intertwined. Kind of showing how important it is to grow both. Just as Laura said, one thing that we found out, and these are distributed computing resources, and people don't necessarily know about each other, but they see how they work. And so if we found that if one person works on a set of files that are connected, others will stay away, give them a little bit of a distance, don't touch it, even if they don't know them personally. We also found that people value the social input. So sometimes people progress to become maintainers, even if they haven't contributed technically as much. So they gain the trust of the community. So many things happen through the social interactions, through the community interactions, not just through the technical. So the technical kind of is a consequence in a way of the social.
Could you remind me of the question again?
The question is about the relationship between the community and sustainability of the community and sustainability of the product.
Yeah, so I think it really can be quite varied. So I've seen some projects where they're end up in essentially becoming a prototype, right? So they have a project that's quite successful, and then other projects come and build on those and new versions of them. I've seen other projects where the project itself just keeps sustaining and keeps going. Another thing that can happen is sometimes two different projects end up getting merged. And so I think there's a lot of sort of these ways that projects can be sustained, and it doesn't always look the same. But sometimes the community around them stays the same. But even those communities can shift around. So like sometimes a project starts in an academic environment, and then it moves into a corporate environment, or becomes a company. And so the community slightly changes in that sense. The goals and directors. So yeah, I think it's very intertwined, and it's complicated, and it's different by project and community by community. But there's a lot of lessons, and there's probably maybe some archetypes that we could identify and understand better.
I'll add two more things. Totally agree with what everyone else is saying. One is just that this reminds me of a project that I was contributing to a little bit, or trying to. And it was this product that we all really wanted. It was a really good idea, and we really didn't want to like fracture the community. We wanted to unite on one solution. And there was a huge community that wanted it, and it was just the governance wasn't there, the sense of forward movement wasn't there. So people didn't want to contribute because they're like, well, is my PR just going to sit there for 6 months? So I think I agree with Laura's comment that community is not enough. There's a lot more that goes into it. The community is not just going to magically make itself really inclusive and successful. The other thing is I think it's important to keep in mind that community doesn't have to mean like scientific Python. It doesn't have to be a gigantic thing. Like a community can be 2 people. And if you've ever pair programmed, then you know that it's magic compared to doing your own code base and nobody ever looks at it. Just having one other person who really understands your code is magic. And so I think it's also important to keep in mind that our definition of community should include just teaming up in wherever we can.
Slightly riff on that. I really like the pair programming thing, and I think even when you're by yourself, sometimes it's a helpful activity to imagine yourself trying to talk to someone else while you're coding. And I think that is, that pair programming is a really, if you haven't done it, definitely try it. It makes things a lot more fun, and you end up figuring out things that you wouldn't figure out before, and better other words.
You touched on a point that's very important, I think, and that is the continuity. Do something as if there will be somebody coming after you, right? To take over. So how will you do it so that they can, right? And that's what makes it.
So you all have created a great segue into the next question with this idea that community, even if is strong, is not sufficient, or that the community doesn't have to be large. So these conceptions that we have about what sustainability looks like, in your experience, what myths or misconceptions exist around sustainability that you would like to highlight and address? And I'm going to start with Virginia on this one.
Sure. So I think the number one myth is just thinking that there's one magic bullet that will help an open source project succeed. And I can name some magic bullets that I've heard people propose.
Money?
Definitely not enough. I've definitely seen money spent in unwise ways. I think people think, well, if we just hire more engineers, then everything will be fine. And I've seen how that can also be bring its own set of challenges. Also thinking that, well, the community build it, they will come, or we have enough interest and that's all we need. We don't need governance. We don't need to think about DEI. So those would, I could go on, but the magic bullet trap is the big one.
Jarrod, Vladimir, Laura?
Yeah, I'll just also maybe riff on the money. So absolutely we need the money, but the money is there. Not that we don't want it, but it also, like, when you have a volunteer project where everyone's on equal footing volunteering, money coming into a specific individual makes it complicates the story. Another thing that happens with money is that often money comes with strings attached. So, like, one of my favorite mathematicians is Paul Halmos, and he was very opposed to U.S. government funding of mathematical research because he thought it would corrupt mathematics. And obviously you have less math, but I think the same thing happens when you start accepting money from companies or from foundations. They start with whatever their vision is, which may not be good for the developer community. It may not be good for the user community. So money is definitely needed, but it's very complicated, and how it impacts a project is not always obvious.
Just to mention that we found that 90% of diversity.md files are the same. People just copy and paste. So it's not just about having a governance.md or a diversity file. It has to be meaningful. It has to be meaningful to your project, right?
Mm-hmm. I think in particular also you have to, as Vladimir was saying, it's not so much the copying and pasting that's the problem as it being meaningful to your project and being willing to enforce the code of conduct that you copied and pasted. Like, you actually have to read it to make sure that you even agree with it, right? And with your diversity statement, and make sure that it's really something that you can stand behind. And this isn't really an answer to the question, but I did want to just expand upon what Vladimir was saying.
Okay, so we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about the work that we're doing around sustainability within the UC OSPO network. And so, Jarrod, can you articulate the role and the goals of the UC OSPO network with respect to sustainability?
So I'm going to have to need some help with this, but so I think we're doing several different facets, and there's different approaches for different groups. So one of them is trying to understand the best practices and make sure that those are available to people. Another thing is trying to look at metrics and indicators, which I think Vladimir will be talking about in a bit. Some of the work that he's done there. Another one, at least I think would be one of my goals, is to try to figure out ways of communicating the need for, especially around open science types of open source projects, the role of the university in funding that and the support needed, like we've mentioned several times about rewarding, grad students and postdocs and early stage faculty in this regard. And I'm sure there's a few other things I missed. I think you want to add to that? Yes.
I think maybe Amber and I are championing this, but also a sustainability playbook is something that we want to we create just to sort of guide very friendly, kind of pretty, almost like a brochure or something that can guide people through what are the different pathways to sustainability for your project. So if you know of any literature that does that, we're kind of trying to see what's out there and what we can provide to the UC community specifically that'll help them figure that out.
Sorry to interject.
Oh, please do.
I work with Lyricists. In 2017, we got an IMLS grant to do almost exactly that. And the product of that was the It Takes a Village framework for open source sustainability. So if anybody might be helpful to people, so if anybody wants to look that up, it's open. You guys can access it at itab.lyricist.org.
Great.
Yeah, maybe to just riff on that village notion. I haven't read that report, so I may be off base here, but I think one of the things that is important to realize is often like an individual tool doesn't exist in isolation. So almost every project I use relies on a whole stack of other open source projects. And so the sustainability of my project, even if I'm a one-person developer, really is a whole global community, right? So all the way from I typically use an operating system that's open source, an editor that's open source, a programming language that's open source, and I use a bunch of libraries that are open source in any project I use. So there's this really deep need to sort of tend the entire garden of open source, not just the individual project you're on.
So yeah, Vladimir, I was going to ask you to expand on specific activities that are happening.
Sure, and I just want to first preface this by saying sustainability is just one of the pillars of our UC OSPO, and we have the two others just as a reminder, which is discovery and education, and they overlap. So many of the activities we do in sustainability are also covered by the others. We overlap and we do things together. So it's important to consider the whole thing as working together. But I'm more from the perspective of using socio-technical methods and systems to describe complex groups of people and how they can be productive and stay healthy. And I've been working on this for many years. And I think sustainability is the right word to describe what happens in a good, well-behaving, healthy open source software projects. And my work has been more on the quantitative side, and we'll hear more about that later. How do we actually tell this from the artifacts that they produce? And how do we tell it in real time? And so you'll hear more about that. In the second part.
Yeah. And actually, one thing I wanted to expand on, I was thinking about, as Virginia said, this playbook concept coming from within the UC. Part of the motivation for that, and my direct experience working in the libraries, is that right now funders are telling projects you can have X number of years of funding, but end of which you need to be self-sustaining. And researchers will say, well, what does that look like? Because they don't have a basis of experience in this necessarily. They've developed a project that's well used within their community, and the funding agencies, and true story, will say, well, go to your institution. They will sustain it for you. And so they come to the library and say, here's something that needs to be sustained. And so I think this playbook, this concept of it's not one size fits all, is that there are varying ways in which we can think about sustainability, and they're going to be project specific. And the institution will support you, but can't solve that problem for you necessarily, despite what funders might be articulating to researchers. And so I think that, for me, that's part of the motivation of the sustainability group, is to be able to elevate this information and resources in a role of supporting researchers in sustainability. So I just had to interject my perspective there. Mm-hmm. So, Laura, I'm going to direct this one to you. What is the desired future outcome for OSPO sustainability? So for the UC, so it's not the projects themselves, but we have this challenge where we are looking to support projects with sustainability resources, but we also need to sustain the OSPO. So what is the desired outcome for the UC OSPO network in terms of its sustainability and sustainability of the work that we are doing on campuses?
That is an evolving narrative. So as I have understood it, we have previously, it's very much like you were saying. When I started, I was told that we were currently funded by the Sloan Foundation, and we would be looking to be getting funding from the UC. And recent developments, trademark, resulted in that not being especially feasible anymore. And so at the moment, our funding opportunities, as far as I know, come from, we're hoping that we would be renewed by the Sloan Foundation, our grant by the Sloan Foundation.
I think another thing, I don't want to make this sound bad, but I don't know if everyone remember what Fran was saying, that, one of the things that the sort of distributed volunteer nature of a lot of the projects we have is that we have some resilience to this kind of thing. So, on campus at UC Berkeley, and I think at other UCs, there's already these communities that exist of people working in this space. And so now, at least that we've got these named organizations, while we're also trying to find money and have a long-term sustainability path, if we can build up a community of people that are already working on different projects, and hopefully leverage that to build up some sort of sustainability that gets us through funding laws, and hopefully funding will be restored at some point, or become easier to come by and grow. And also, I think as we demonstrate successes, hopefully that will not bite us in the foot, but will make people more interested in seeing this kind of thing go forward.
So with that, I'd like to open it up to questions from the audience, for you to share perspectives, your own perspectives about sustainability, your experiences at your institutions, or questions for the panel. We do not have a microphone, so yeah, please raise your hand and I'll call upon you, and that'll be the easiest way to go.
I'm curious, it's kind of a direct follow-up of the one we were just talking about, because I think that's going to be affecting a lot of people, the recent developments, and so what are some other general tips, we can just kind of go deeper on that, about ways to build this sustained product without funding? There's some strategies to, try to limit costs or find other support besides grants, or, just the most effective things that don't require additional funding.
I can take this. First of all, I'm of the opinion, which may be contrary to my, UC system organizational kind of opinion, but that you buy, you spend yourself out of a hole. You invest in things that are meant to last. There's always money. The question is, what do you want to use it on? And of course, there's competing priorities here. But we do invest into the libraries. We do invest into multiple things at the universities that are kind of, lost leaders in a way, if you want to call them that way, right? And there are staff positions that are funded by those. So freeing up some of their time can be a way to sustain some of those efforts that are meant to last, okay? Even if they lose money. Okay. So yes, maybe government funds will not be, easily obtainable, and overheads may be low, but private foundations are here, and we have been lucky enough to be funded by them. So I think this can persist so long as it has customers, and I think we have to show that somebody is actually using this, somebody is buying into this, and I think that's the priority. Just keep working and keep generating things that people will like.
Just to build off of that super quickly, I think I'm like the least qualified person here to speak about this, because you all have more experience than I do. But the sense I get is diversifying your funding sources is super important, which is kind of why we're really interested in partnerships with all kinds of organizations. The other thing that I believe is important is data about what services people need, and being really strategic about what we offer. And that's why I'm spearheading this survey, because we want to make sure that we're delivering services that are really going to be making a difference.
Yeah, okay. A plug for the survey then. So, yeah, there was a question in here.
Yeah.
Hi, I had a question regarding community because I know that was touched upon a lot, and I want to come from like a student perspective. Just for context, we have a community of over 100 student devs working on open source stuff. But one thing we observed is a lot of these people do this for a more individualistic gain point of view. So they kind of see this as something that they want to contribute and get it done with. How do you suggest that you try to shift everyone's perspective toward the more shared purpose, but at the same time, like make them feel like they're working together, especially when most of this stuff is online and there's barely any real life interaction going on?
Excellent question. I'm going to pass to Laura for that one first, and then.
Yeah. Okay, so I love this question. And I think, unfortunately, I think it's going to depend on the group of people in question. Like what will make what this particular group of people feel that the work that they're doing is valuable and that they are valued as humans in the community. Something that I have noticed is a difference between, okay, here's a difference. When we were doing our GitHub scraping, I looked at thousands of repos, and some of the repos took a very conversational tone in their readmes and so on, and you felt like you were reading something that was written by a person that likes people. And some of them are much more robotic or very, very sort of dry academic language, and it's a really small thing, and it won't be true for everybody, but it is true for a lot of people that just talking like a human makes a really big difference. And actually asking, like the question that you asked, like how to help people feel like they want to contribute, even though it's all sort of impersonal, ask them. Right? Because it's going to vary from one group to another. And that's something that I think we often try to figure out what people's needs might be without ever asking them. And that's, of course, yet another plug for the survey. That's what we're trying to do with this survey, is not assume that we know what people's needs are, but ask them and then work from there.
I think our OpenSci have had a great community support model. So they have a community manager, and maybe you know about this with Karthik and Stephanie Budden, but with that community, they would have community calls, but they can be very intimidating. And so Stephanie, as the community manager, would have one-on-ones with new community members just to kind of go over the culture of the organization, and so that people felt much more comfortable, empowered, engaged when they went to a community call, and they had already met those, individuals that were facilitating and leading. And so it was kind of a welcoming process that they had for new contributors.
Yeah, so most of this has to be kind of fluid because students come in and go out and requirements change over time. So, thank you.
Can I just add to that? I think that the way the community is set up, and in particular, just the README on GitHub can be such an important introduction to that community. And, it came up earlier, this idea of contributors who aren't necessarily coding. And if you open up a repo and it's got a ton of contributors, it's got a really clear README talking about community guidelines and stuff like that, it's welcoming, it's inviting, but it's also indicative that this is a place where you're expected to, act in a communal way, and that you can't just kind of go in there and add your own contribution for your own glory and then step away. And so I think kind of there's a chicken and egg, right? You want this inclusive community, you need to kind of model that and start there too.
Yeah. Was yours a follow-up? Otherwise, we had a question here first.
It was a conversation, yes.
Yes, carry on, please.
Interesting technical solution to community problems. I know it's an engineer coming in with an engineering solution, but having tests on an open source project that run all the time is a huge community builder, because it brings so much confidence to contributors that they feel like they're not breaking things. Gigantic source of community. We found that in the Ember.js community in a big way. Any tests, literally no matter what they are, and a huge sustainability builder, because then the maintainer doesn't necessarily have to pay attention. They can set up GitHub to run open source tests once a month and see if anything failed. Those two things together, I think, as an organization, as OSPOs, if we're looking at open source, we should really focus on automated testing as a technical solution to interesting community problems, which seems strange, but actually solves a lot of just weird edge case, getting contributions, keeping maintainers problems too.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think even if you're not trying to build a community, you're just doing your stuff, like you don't do testing, like it's an thing. I don't need that. How do you work with that?
I agree with you 100%. Yeah.
Isn't that something we need to like make sure everyone understands? Because yeah, you can break your own stuff.
There was a question on the end, and then Sam after. Did you still have a question?
Totally slipped my mind. So.
Okay.
I'm curious if you all have any thoughts about succession planning or offboarding, any good examples of that. Especially, I work with a lot of students, and there isn't often formal offboarding. You all leave, and then maybe a staff member is like sustain things. But yeah, did you see any of that in your scraping, or there's other examples?
Short answer, no. No. I think the most common way that I've seen it handled is just, if somebody, so it depends on who goes, right? So if it's the lead maintainer disappears, then that's, one whole big issue. And then there's if, like a student contributor is not necessarily a minor contributor, but there might be a lot of minor contributions from people who might be like students who would leave. And I think maybe you don't necessarily need offboarding if there isn't what you could have, like, I think maybe the thing to do would be to have if you haven't, if you claim an issue and you haven't done anything with it in X number of days or weeks or something, then we're going to unassign you from it. And that's fine. We're not mad, right? Like, and then that's all. Versus the succession planning, which I would associate more with if the maintainer needs to leave. And I think that's going to have to be like on a community by community basis, how that would be handled. It's not something that I have personally handled or helped anyone handle yet. So it's something I'm really interested in hearing more about from other people.
So the project we'll talk about later has,
Very soon.
it has gone through 7 different developers and, major developers. And so, some planning is involved. But what I like to do is actually overlap the roles. So make sure that there's always multiple people working on it at a time, and there's always somebody who can pick up the work, even though there's a major developer that they're maintaining a master's student, an undergrad, or whatever. But there must be somebody else who is overlapping with them. And so then the important thing is to understand the community and kind of give them credit and make sure they don't overlap in terms of the IP that they're producing as a thesis or whatever. So there's all sorts of issues, but anticipating it and overlapping has worked for us.
I think that not necessarily kind of succession, it kind of leads to the difficult question in terms of sustainability is, does everything need to be sustained? And what does it look like to plan for sunsetting something? And I think that, these succession planning doesn't seem to happen early enough. And so then, you have retirees that want their product to continue, but there's no one to take that. And so you have to have these hard conversations about, well, sustainability doesn't mean that everything has to be sustained in perpetuity. And so kind of planning for sunsetting, I think, is an important component. Okay. Thank you.
Not a question, but kind of an observation. I guess, especially in my peers, when I talk to people about open source contribution, nowadays, there's not much intrinsic motivation to contribute to a repository to help them out, but more so like a label tag. Look, oh, I'll go to GSOC because if I have it on my resume, it will help me land an internship.
Yeah.
What's everybody's viewpoint on that kind of like not so good reasons to contribute to open source and how that kind of affects the quality of code and the quality of work?
Yeah,
it definitely has changed over time. I mean, it used to be that if students started to contribute to projects, they actually cared, they stayed around, and that's rarer and rarer, and it's a huge burden on the maintainers. We get these people that come in, take a huge amount of effort to get like, some code in that you would have written in like a few minutes. It's not, and while you're working with them, you realize they're not going to quite do it the right way. So once you spent all these months of getting the code in from them, you have to redo it anyhow. And then they never come again. It's a huge problem in a lot of open source projects I'm involved with.
Is like open source recognition gonna be the only solution to this?
Which?
Like recognizing open source contributions, like you recognize citations and things like those.
I mean, I don't know, because I've never applied for a job in industry, but I understand that that's what people are doing this for, is get jobs. But I do wonder what it's going to look like going forward, right? Because it's transitioned already with LLMs and all these co-pilots and coding. I don't know what the future of programming is going to look like. And so I wonder if it might change back, where there's fewer job opportunities, and that might make the open source community a more vibrant place again. I don't know. Yeah, we're in a very, very, very strange time, I think. It's hard to predict, or at least for me, what the world's going to look like in 5 or 10 years.
I think maybe there are also like little things you can do. Like, I hate to say it's the individual's responsibility. It should be the system's responsibility. But there are also little things you can do, like narrative CVs are becoming more popular, or just like when you're practicing interview questions, like practice talking about why your contributions were not a burden on the maintainers, why you really stuck with it, and why that's important to you. And so there's also ways that you can show, like, I didn't just do this because it looks good, I do this because I care.
That's the one. Is it being just forming a narrative, and especially around, this is more likely to be like something you get asked in an interview. Can you tell me about contributions that you made to whatever? And being able to talk not just about like, these are the code, this is like the code that I wrote, and so on, and on top of that, this is how I thought about the code that I wrote. That's great. But being able to say, and this is how I had to think about things in terms of the overall structure of the project and the culture of the project. And I made sure, to look at this type of documentation. I was going to do it this way, but it turned out that that was sort of counter to this style in general. And so I had to rethink how I was going to do this in order to make it merge with the overall content. That kind of thing will really set you apart in a way that I fixed a typo in this one thing won't so much.
Thank you.
Okay, we have time for one brief. Yeah, no, please.
I was just gonna add to that. I think that's why community calls are so great, because you think about other people's motivations, and you have to kind of learn the broader reason for the project.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. If there's a burning question, we have time. Otherwise, I really want to move on to presentation by Vladimir, Nafiz, and Arjun. And this is some of the work that they had been engaged in previously, but is part of the OSPO network, which is looking at how we can track the health of open source projects through the OSPEx dashboard. So I'm going to allow whoever is presenting first to come up and get your slides ready. And then we will have a brief Q&A after the presentation as well.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so thank you all. So this is my second role today. I want to tell you about the tool we developed as part of the OSPO and as part of an NSF funded effort. We have given it a name of OSPEx while it was in development, but now that this is becoming a public beta as of today, so we decided to go with a real name, and this is a big reveal. And it's going to be OSPRI.
Are we praying for sustainability?
So we're going to have the UC Davis OSPRI tracking projects. So, as I said, this has been a number of years effort. It sits at the intersection of two separate funded efforts. One is from the NSF on growing convergence research, where our goal was to help nascent open source software projects develop properly. And that was a combination of many different skills, including governance, social science with multiple universities still going on. And the second one is the Sloan funded effort that funded the UC OSPO. And so OSPEx now, OSPRE has been developed by a number of people. As I said, we went through a number of developers over time. Some of them have already graduated, Li Kang, Swati, and Anirudh. Some of them were involved in the algorithmic side. Many of the current and past people were involved in the actual development of the front, back end. And two of them are here, Nafiz, who will present, and Arjun, of course, who is an undergrad at UC Davis. Priyal just graduated. She couldn't be here. She was responsible for the front and back end. And I'm going to leave it to Nafiz now, since he is the most involved in this project at this point, and he'll tell us all about it. So look forward to it.
Thank you for giving me the floor. Hello everyone, I am Nafiz. I am a PhD student at University of California, Davis. I do research in Deagle Lab with Professor Vladimir Filkov. So my primary research is on open source software sustainability. So today I will give a presentation on our tool, OSPEx. So the motivation of this tool grounded on studying open source software sustainability. How can we make a random GitHub projects make sustainable in the long run? So we started our journey with studying Apache Foundation. So Apache has an incubator program which can foster an open source project become sustainable in the long run. So we studied hundreds of Apache projects to identify that what are the factors or determinants that makes an open source project sustainable. Based on the knowledge that we have gained, we have developed AI-driven method, and to disseminate the knowledge with all of to disseminate the knowledge with the community, we have then come up with an interactive tool. Before designing the tool, we did a market analysis to see that whether there exists any existing tool. So we found that Apache already has a tool named Clutch. So Clutch provides a real-time status of any projects, any project that are in the pod link. So when a project enters the Apache Foundation incubation program, these projects are called pod link. So for any pod link, Apache provides a real-time status. So we can see in here, A, B, C, D are the column values. Columns are actually features. So we can see for a particular project how each of the features are doing. So they have different color codes. Here, green means regarding that particular feature, the project is doing good. Red color means the project is not doing good for that particular feature, and that needs immediate action. There are some limitation of Clutch analysis. So one is that Clutch is not longitudinal, so it can't provide anything historically. It doesn't preserve the past history that what have happened in that project, and also it is not dependent on the context. So to ameliorate this, to take all those things into account, by taking all these things into account, we come up with this tool. To capture the system behavior, we adopted the concept of socio-technical network. So here, social networks captures the communication that have happened in a project. So here, social network is a bipartite graph. Here it stores or it shows the communication from developer to developer. So if developer A sends an email on the mailing list, and if developer B responds, so it means there is a communication between developer A to developer B. Then we have technical networks. Technical networks is similarly a bipartite graph. It shows the communication, like what are the files a particular developer committed on a particular month. So if a particular developer committed through 3 different files on a particular month, it means there will be 3 edges from that developer to from the left-hand side to right-hand side. So for a particular given project, we can collect the project metrics, then we can generate the social networks, then we can generate the technical networks. By accumulating these 3, we can feed this tree into a machine learning model, and the machine learning model can provide the real-time status or real-time sustainability forecasting of a project. So like what happened in each of the months, or what is the probability of the project being sustainable at each of the months. So here we can see the probability of sustainability at each of the months of a project like this Apache project that is named Commons RDF. So project was in the incubation program for 22 months. For each of the months, we can see a graduation forecast. Next, the idea is that suppose a project is not doing good, or project is not doing as expected, like for example, the graduation probability of sustainability suppose dropped at a particular month. So now what we can do? So we might want to take some actions so that we can ameliorate this, we can make the project sustainable in the long run. So to help a project become sustainable when the project is doing bad, we come up with the concept of researched actionable. So here we studied thousands of articles, published articles, to see that what are the actionables that are mentioned on those articles. So by using large language models and published articles in IPSI and FSC top software engineering venues, we collected thousands of actionables, and these actionables are tangible results that provides when adopting an actionable, it provides tangible and positive results. For example, an example of an actionable is that utilize a distributed pair programming tool that supports defined roles between the pairs. So this actionable is supported by a study from 2015. So these are the components that the social technical networks and the research actionables. So these are the components that makes up the tool. Now I will go to the live demo of the tool to show that how this tree, that's how all these things works in real time. So yeah, as you can see, at first I will talk about the panel that we have. So we have a project selector here. We can select any project. The tool works in Foundation and GitHub mode. So in Foundation mode, it's a bit too small. It's now this. Okay. So yeah, it is in project selector. We can select any foundation, foundational project. Currently, we have Apache projects in place. We can in GitHub mode, we can randomly plug in any projects from GitHub, and it will generate all the strings for a given project. So here we can see the probability of sustainability in this panel. This panel will show the project details. We can see the actionable recommendations in this panel, and you want to see the advanced analytics. We can see the social network, the technical network, and these are some project latest information like number of emails, number of commits, number of committers, and number of persons that participate in the mailing list. So now I will select a random Apache project. For example, let's see, we select this project, ACE. So now for this project, we will see that what actually have happened with this project when this project was in the incubation. So the project ACE was in incubation for 31 months. So this is the month 1 of this project, and we have some recommendations from month 1. And for month 1, the probability was low for this project. So now we will move this slider from left to right to see how different things have happened with this project for each month. So we see as we move forward from month 1 to month 2 and 3 onwards, so month 1 there was like less contribution, so that's why the probability of sustainability was low. So as we moving forward, so probably it happens with any GitHub project, any project, it can happen that in initial months people are not that much engaging, or people are taking time to set up everything. Then people become engaged with the project as things move forward. So yeah, we can see the social networks, the technical networks at month 3. So at month 3, the probability was 62%. So let's see what happens with this project as we move forward and forward. So here we can see at month 6, the project is experiencing a downturn. Here, one thing to notice that for each month, we show 3 curves. from each month forwards. For example, for month 6, we will see that there are 3 curves that are on to the future. So one curve, the green curve, is the positive curve. It means that from month 6, if you adopt the actionable, you can go on the path on the green curve. That is like you can make things better. On a particular month, when you are a particular month, if you don't follow the actionable, or if you face any drastic change, suppose your developer disengagement or policy change, governance change, in that case you can go to that downward curve as well. That is the red curve. And if you do as it is, we will move forward to the gray colored curve, that is the neutral curve. So you see that in the each month there are some actionables, and each month the social and technical networks will change. So if you can recall that in month 3, there were more developers was engaged in the social and technical network. As the developers disengaged, the probability of sustainability decreased. Now I will move forward to see the project, to show that the project is in action for any random GitHub projects. So I will take a GitHub project. For example, let's take this one, that is Git Sizer. So I will plug it into the tool. So when if you plug any random GitHub projects from GitHub, it will do the real-time scraping. After doing the real-time scraping, it will provide us this all the forecasting and all the health-related information in real time. So for the project Git Sizer, we can see the project was available for 86 months. So for the Git Sizer, for each month, what have happened for months. So similarly, Git Sizer started, the probability was low when the project started. And when we move the month slider from left to right, we see that more developers were engaged from month to month, and activity was changed. So similarly, at a particular month, that project. So for each month, we can see what was the prediction of probability, and what are the actionables, and what are the social and technical networks, if there is any. So for this project, we can see at the month 15 onwards, the probability of sustainability drop. So this is the classical behavior with any GitHub projects, that initial months people are more engaging, and after a particular month, usually people disengages and the project becomes discontinued. So although we can see some spikes here and there, but in the long term, the project discontinued. So by this, we can see that what actually is the case for a project in real time, and we can get the actionables. So if we want to make it sustainable in the long run, we can adopt these actionables, and incorporating this to make sure that in the long run, the project will move forward to the trajectory of becoming successful.
Can I just, I'm really sorry, I'm a bit confused about the red, yellow, and green.
Yeah.
Would you mind just explaining
Sure.
this?
The red line is that, so I'm at suppose July to May 2022. Suppose, yeah, July 2022. So when we are in July 2022, this, by seeing all of the activities that have happened in this project from January 2018 to July 22, this blue colored line is the models forecasting, or models prediction of sustainability from this period. Now, from this period, like July 2022 to next 4 months, we predicted some, like this is like forecasting, like if something have happened from 0 to n month, what will happen in month n plus 1, n plus 2, n plus 3. So this is kind of like by seeing the data from January 2018 to July 2022, what will happen in September, October, and November. So this is like forecasting of September, October, November.
I think what I'm realizing is that the red on the model prediction is different to the red in the actionable recommendations.
Oh,
and
yeah.
the green in the
actionable recommendations are actually, yeah, sorry for the confusion, I should have cleared this. So actionable recommendations, green, red, medium, and yellow are the different color codes. Like for example, if a particular actionable is critical, that is colored as red. Medium, if it is less important, this is colored as medium, and if it is low, less important, it is colored as low. So this is not directly correlated with the red of the sustainability talk. Now I will move forward to the system architecture, that what is actually under the hood of this tool. So yeah, when we plug in any GitHub project, so the tool has actually 4 different modules: the OSS scrapper, the network generator module, the health predictor module, and the React recommender module. So we take a GitHub project, random GitHub projects from the internet. We run the scrapper to collect the raw data. We store the raw data in a MongoDB database, and then React Net Generator module takes the raw data, generates the network features. So then this network features are again then stored in the MongoDB database. Machine learning model, a health predictor module, it runs the machine learning model. It takes the network features. By taking the network features, it provides the real-time forecasting that what is the probability of sustainability at each of the months. And the health predictor module communicates with the React recommender or research actionable recommender. So and research actionable recommender provide the tailored actionable for each of the months, and all those things are stored in the MongoDB database. So when the user selects from month to month, these things are popped out, or these things comes from the MongoDB database. And these are the resources needed to run this tool, more available in our GitHub repository. These things, the tool is currently hosted on our lab server. And these are the plans for OSPEx in the future. So we want to make the actionables more specific. So we want to implement a retrieval augmented generation framework here, so that we can, when we are generating the project information in real time, we can provide the actionable more specific, that what actually has happened, what have actually went wrong, what are the actionables they have already followed. These are the things that we want to incorporate in the future. As of now, we didn't consider the governance. So in the future, we want to consider project governance. So there are examples of many projects that people were engaging, everything was going fine, but still the project discontinued in the long run just because the governance rule was not set properly. So we want to include the governance. And yeah, we want, and next is we want to implement features and needs as suggested by the UC OSPO team. Then we want to make a tailor-made model-made solution for different use cases for foundations, individual projects, and we can make another version for OSPOs. And this is the resources and contacts. And here I'm almost done with the presentation. If you have any questions.
So I know that we are holding you up between now and your lunch, and so you will have opportunity to ask questions during lunch, but I do want to provide the opportunity for a couple of questions. First one is going to be mine. Can we go there and start playing right now?
Yeah. This is inactive. This is inactive, yeah.
Okay. Oh, Jarrod, can you hold yours because you already know the team?
Very nice work. I have one question. Actually, I have just one question. So you are predicting like if like things are going good or bad. Do you have like any idea, or just like is there any tools that for the consequence of things going bad for like an open source system like software on others, like on a draft, that if like this goes bad, what are the dependencies that will just break, or when the other dependencies will break? If like, for example, like if something is not updated for the next Python like release cycle, like when it just becomes catastrophic for downstream softwares, like basically a dependency.
Yeah, you're talking about that. Yeah, if anything changes, suppose we provided an actionable that suppose a particular Python library, then what are the things that can break in real time, right?
So basically, no, for me, it's just like a part of a risk assessment of if things goes bad with this repository, so it just dies down. Right. What are, so on the risk is, so you're predicting a risk of how much percentage that this will die.
Right.
So I want to know, like, after it dies, what happens to any other, like the ecosystem of open source software?
Yeah, this is what we are studying with we are implementing the retrieval augmentation framework here. So we are seeing that, suppose what are the similar projects to, suppose we want to interested about a project X. So we suppose something we are trying to change in project X, then what can happen related to this project? We want to come up with the suggestions basing on the fact that what have happened in other GitHub projects that are related with Project X. Suppose we scrap a good number of GitHub projects. So the retrieval augmentation framework can search that what are the projects that are closely similar with Project X, and if something changes in Project X, what actually have already happened in other projects, for example, X1, X2, X3, then we can provide this direct action of direct suggestions or direct evidence that, hey, that is I'm suggesting, and if you follow this, this can happen. If you don't follow this, these are the consequences, and my consequences are evident from what have happened in other GitHub projects.
Just to connect the two, so there's no immediate plans for doing dependency tracking, if that's what you're asking. But we do react to what similar projects have done in the past, but that's more for historical information, not for future.
Causality,
Yeah,
basically.
no.
If Project X changes, what happens to projects like Y, Z, and
No, we don't have plans for that, but yeah, that's a good idea.
There was a question there.
Oh, well, we're out of time, so maybe I'll ask offline.
Okay. Well, in that case, I would like everyone to join me in thanking our panelists, Laura, Virginia, Jarrod, and Vladimir.